Hey guys, welcome to part 5 of our weight loss series. In this part, I'm going to be talking about food composition, nutrient timing, and supplementation. So if you guys have any question up until now, I will be answering them in the next video, part 6. So if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll be sure to answer all of your questions in the next video. So with that being said, let's get started. First, we'll talk about nutrition timing, and the first macronutrient that I want to talk about is protein because it's by far the most important macronutrient. And in protein, there are a lot of myths regarding nutrient timing as to you have to be eating every 2 hours, and if you don't consume the right amount of protein right after your workout, you become very catabolic, meaning you'll start to lose muscle, all those things. So let's get started as to what is my recommendation on this topic. So the first biggest myth is the anabolic window myth, that if you don't get 50 or 60 grams of hydrolyzed whey protein within the few hours of training, then you become extremely catabolic for the rest of the day, and then you start to lose muscle instead of building, which might be the case for endurance training because that sort of training is catabolic and you need to replenish the lost macronutrients during training. But for our case, that is resistance training, it has its own anabolic response independent of what nutrition that you're consuming. Research has also shown that there isn't much of a difference in anabolism when protein is consumed before or after your training, as long as you're hitting the required amount of protein within a 24-hour period. So this suggests that there is no magic time to consume. But one of the important things that you have to consider is that there is no way of our body to store proteins like carbohydrates and fat. Carbohydrate could be stored as glycogen, fats could be stored as adipose tissue, but for protein, it's only available in our body when it is present in our system with outside sources. There is a research that shows that in the absence of this amino acid called leucine, that muscle protein synthesis may not occur. But since there is like a threshold to how much protein that you can consume per meal, about 30 to 50 grams, I would recommend that you divide your protein into manageable pieces throughout the day. So for instance, if your protein consumption for the day is 100 grams and you have to have 4 meals, I would recommend that you divide them into 25 grams per meal so that you're constantly providing your body with the fuel that it needs, and there's a constant supply of protein because, like I said, it cannot be stored. And there is no significant benefits as to consuming more protein than what's currently required, higher than the anabolic threshold. Second macronutrient is carbohydrates, and carbohydrate generally has a bad name in the fitness industry, but it has some very specific benefits that could be used to help better our training performance and body composition results as well. Some of those functions are pre-workout consumption of carbohydrate will ensure sufficient energy throughout the training session, post-workout carbohydrate to replenish the lost muscle glycogen, and carbohydrate consumption will increase insulin sensitivity, and insulin is anti-catabolic, meaning it will prevent you from losing more muscle. While I think all of these points are true and have some valid benefits for our body composition, as long as we're consuming the total amount of carbohydrates that is required for the entire day, this should not make a difference, and our muscle glycogen will be restored regardless of its nutrient timing. But obviously, when you're consuming too much of a carbohydrate at the same time, like for example, your carbohydrate intake for the day is 200 grams and you consume all your 200 grams early in the morning, you could lead yourself into some problems like being very hungry at the end of the day and overall a feeling of lethargy at the end of the meal. But with that being said, my recommendation is to generally consume about 20 to 30% of your total carbohydrate intake pre-workout, about 1 or 2 hours before the workout, and 30 to 40% of your carbohydrate intake post-workout because that's the time you're the most hungriest and also the time where you're most likely to lose muscle glycogen, and this will help replenish your muscle glycogen. And the rest of the carbohydrate, you may choose to distribute it however you want. Like I said in the beginning, as long as you're hitting the total amount of carbohydrate intake, your glycogen stores will be restored and you will not be catabolic. And this recommendation I'm giving is through my experience and my clients' experience based on how they feel and how they perform but you can totally change it however you want to. There's also a strong argument that carbohydrate puts you off to sleep very well, and carbohydrates late at night will definitely not make you fat. So if you have a problem sleeping, try to increase carbohydrate more towards your bedtime, so that might improve in putting you to sleep better. So that's for carbohydrates. So now let's move to fiber. So fiber is a non-digestible form of carbohydrate and is a nutrient that has been shown to enhance overall functions with your stomach, your GI health and digestion. Fiber is usually consumed via fruits and vegetables, and it's predominantly available in whole grains like oatmeal and others. As long as fiber is concerned, there is no particular nutrient timing that you should be concerned about. You could have it throughout the day at any time, but I would recommend that you keep it away from your pre-workout and post-workout meals, simply because it's slower in digestion, and it also makes other foods consumed with it slowly digestible, so it could change the glycemic index of the food that you're consuming. So I would place them away from the workout as much as possible, and definitely not during intra workout period. One of the uses of fiber could be when you're in a big dieting phase. This gives you more pound for pound volume for the little calories that it has to offer. So I would recommend, if you're on a deeper diet, to include fiber in your meal, and when you're in a big surplus or bulk, you want the food to be digesting as fast as possible. At this period, fiber should be minimized as much as possible, because GI function will definitely not be a problem when you're in a big surplus. So now let's move on to our last macronutrient, that is fats. And fats has a very similar property as a fiber, as when it's eaten alongside protein and higher glycemic index foods, it slows down the digestion. And fats does not again have a real nutrient timing that you need to be consuming it with. Like fiber, we want to keep it away from our pre-workout and post-workout nutrition, definitely not intra-workout. I would recommend to have fats when you're having a lower carbohydrate meal during the different times of the day, furthest away from the workout, during your lower carb meal, like I previously mentioned. It's also a very good filler, like I said in I think the second part, when you've already hit your optimal carb and protein intake. So to put everything into context of everything that I've said, I would recommend about 4 to 6 meals, given the nature of protein, and it's only available when it's in our GI tract. So a minimum of 4 meals per day, and over 6 meals would be too much, in a sense that it doesn't provide any more benefits. So let's say we have a total of 100 grams of protein that we need to consume in a day, and during the time you're awake, I would divide them into equal halves of 25 protein every single meal. The protein stays fixed throughout the day. For carbohydrates, I would recommend about 20 to 30% pre-workout and 30 to 40% of your total carbohydrate post-workout. And other times you may choose how you want to consume those carbohydrates. If you train early in the morning, then you could train fasted or wake up early just to have your 20% of your carbohydrate. And for fats, I would keep them away from our pre and post workout window, simply because of the nature of it, that it's slow digesting. So furthest away from the workout window, I would put fats, and also fiber would go on one of those places. So now, with that being said, let's move on to food composition, as to which foods are good. Is there a superfood, or some foods digest faster? Is it more anabolic? And first, again, we'll start with protein, because this is the most important macronutrient. So there are different ways to measure the quality of protein, but what we're going to do now is bioavailability. So this means what percentage or how much of those protein that we consumed are digested in our body and absorbed to the bloodstream. Protein quality is also defined by the amount of essential amino acids that are the amino acids that cannot be produced by our body, and non-essential amino acids. In general, animal-based protein are highly bioavailable than vegetable sources of protein. The highest quality of protein we can give our body is whey protein, followed by whey protein concentrate, followed by eggs, whole eggs, meat, beef and pork, chicken, turkey, followed by fish and seafood. And other protein after this are not highly bioavailable, like soya protein, quinoa, and other protein sources that comes from rice, oats, and whole grain breads. Whole grains and breads would fall in the lowest quality of protein. That doesn't go to show that these protein are less useful. It just goes to show that we need to be consuming more protein from higher bioavailable sources just for body composition results. But we need to count protein from each and every sources because all calories are made equal. So second is carbohydrate, and carbohydrate is ranked in glycemic index, 100 being the fastest digesting carbohydrate, meaning it has the ability to alter your insulin and glucose levels very fast, and 0 meaning it is slow digesting and it will be released slower to the bloodstream. Because fiber and fat also have a slow digesting effect, when it's mixed with any other form of carbohydrate and protein, it will slower the rate of absorption. So the fastest digesting carbohydrate would be ranked 100, and those would be dextrose powder, followed by 90 or maybe like cornflakes, baked potato, Gatorade, white bread. These are higher glycemic foods, over 75 glycemic index. त्यसपछि would go into honey, bananas, whole grain bread, brown rice would be within 50 to 75 glycemic index. And lower than this would be slow digesting carbohydrates like peaches, spaghetti, carrots, skim milk, grapefruit, and the lowest one being peanuts with a glycemic index of just 5. But all of these carbohydrates have no effect on body composition. So whether you consume rice or you consume dextrose or you consume peanuts in the source of carbohydrate, this will not have any effect on body composition, just how you feel in your body because of its absorption rate. When you're consuming dextrose, you might not be very full. In regards to when you're consuming peanuts or vegetables or something like that, you may be fuller for a longer period of time. This could be slightly beneficial based on how you feel because of the nutrient timing. Like I said, higher glycemic index carbs like dextrose should be used during intra-workout, and pre-workout or post-workout, I would again recommend a higher glycemic index, maybe like bread, rice, all these would be a good source for pre-workout and post-workout meal. But if body composition is your number one focus, this will not make a difference, only how you feel. So for our fats, again, this will not have so much effect on body composition, but for health purposes, it's recommended that you consume at least 50 to 60% of your total fats coming from monosaturated fat sources like avocados, nuts, seeds, olive oil, etc. Followed by polyunsaturated fats, mostly the purpose of cooking. About 10 to 15% of this should be coming from that, just for cooking purposes. त्यसपछि healthy saturated, mostly animal fats like chicken, little fats, lean cuts of beef also have some fats, coconut oil, all these stuffs should be about 15%. And we should try to avoid fats that come from bacon, eggs. Not so much so that you're not hitting your macronutrient, but is still not very unhealthy. So I get a lot of questions about eggs, कतिवटा खायो भने चाहिँ unhealthy हुन्छ. As long as you're hitting your macronutrient, body composition मा चाहिँ there will be no difference if you have 5 whole eggs or 10 whole eggs. But I would recommend not to go overboard with only those sources of fats, because we want to fill about 50% of our fats coming from monosaturated sources, and followed by trans fat, which we should try to avoid as much as possible. So trans fat or fats that have a long shelf size, so mostly baked goods and junk food or fat, or trans fats. I would recommend that you minimize the use of trans fats. Other than that, there is no effect on body composition, just for health reasons. And yeah, that's everything about food composition. There are no good foods, superfoods. There is no magic food that will make you lose weight faster. Brown rice is not better than white rice is not better than brown rice. It all depends on context, and if you watch this video, I'm sure you're gonna understand what I mean by all of those. And now let's move to the final and interesting topic for most people, and that is supplementation. So for me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of supplements, but I don't also want to discredit it completely, because they have some credit. The only thing I have a problem with is they overpromise and underdeliver, and I don't want you to be a victim of that. So there are a few supplements that are highly researched and that definitely works. For example, whey protein is one of my favorite supplements because of its absorption rate, and it's a great choice for intra-workout or post-workout meals because of its absorption rate and high bioavailability. The quality of the protein is also the highest because it's highly bioavailable, but it also has very little stomach distress, and most people can digest it. And newer formulas of whey protein are made for lactose intolerant people as well, so it's very good quality protein, and there is basically no side effect with this supplement. Again, another very common question I get asked a lot is there side effects of consuming whey protein? There is none. You can have all your 200 grams of protein from whey protein and you'll be completely fine. But the thing is, you might end up being very, very hungry because of how fast it digests in your body. And I think pound for pound, it is one of the most cheapest supplement after creatine. Now we're going to talk about creatine. So creatine is one of the most researched supplement. So basically what it promises you to do is enhance your ability to do more sets during a rep, enhance recovery ability in between sets, hypertrophy stimulus regardless of training or no training, and intramuscular water retention, which makes your muscle bigger. And like, if you don't know already, muscle is 75% water, so it holds some water, so meaning increased in lean body mass, not the tissue but lean body mass. And having researched over 20 years, there is no side effects of creatine as well. And the recommended dosages would be anywhere from 5 to 10 grams depending on how heavy you are. So in general, I would recommend about 0.1 gram per kilo of your body weight. So if I weigh 70 kilos, 7 grams would be my recommendation for creatine. And there is no timing because it slowly needs to get stored in your body. So you may consume creatine anytime during the day, pre-workout, post-workout, early in the morning with the vitamins, anything is completely fine. And you don't have to cycle creatine. You can load creatine faster, but I would just recommend to stick to 7 grams and continue it throughout the year with no side effects. Third group of supplements I would use, it's mostly for if you're doing long duration workouts, is glycemic carbohydrate supplements like dextrose powder, glucose bhन्छ नेपालमा त्यो पनि पाउँछ, Gatorade. All these things are in between your workout just to give you some energy. These are fast digesting carbohydrates, so intra workout, if you're working out longer than 2 or 3 hours, I would recommend about 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrates in between your workout. So that's another supplement I would recommend. त्यसपछि another one is stimulants. It's sold as many different things in the industry. Fat burners bhन्छ कसैले pre-workout bhन्छ, all those things, and they have shown to have increased motivation to train, enhanced ability to maintain performance during high volume training, enhanced pain tolerance during training, a slight fat burning effect, not so promising like the fat burners promise, but some research have shown to increase fat burning and appetite reduction, which is also a part of losing weight. So if you're less hungry, you're likely to eat less. So that's that. But recommendation for stimulant use is to mostly use caffeine based stimulants because that's the most well researched. Only use the recommended dosage of pre-workout because then over the recommendation there could be some side effects. Don't consume stimulants too close to your bedtime. Often they interfere with sleep. Sleep is by far more important than any other supplement for sure. And I would recommend when you're in a bulking phase to reduce the amount of stimulants as you won't really be needing because you have the fuel from your workout, and during fat loss phases is when I would recommend pre-workout. And one last source of protein is also a supplement that I use and recommend is casein. So this is like whey protein, high quality, but it's contrast polar opposite, that the fact that it breaks down very, very slow. And there are researches that have shown that casein digests in the body as slow as up to 7 hours. So this is a good source if you're not going to have protein for an extended period of time, mostly before sleep or even during the day when you know you're going to be fasting for a long period. And these foods are safe and it's slightly more expensive than whey, but it has its benefits. So if you so with that being said, we come to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like this video. Reach out to me for nutrition or training coaching. I'll be coming with part 6 of our series, the last and final part, talking about exercise, cardio, and some of the questions that you might have regarding any of the topics that I've talked about previously. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.